Okay, merci. Thank you very much. We're looking forward to hearing from the government on the economic update. And here are some things that we are thinking about and we want to see in the economic update. First of all, just for some context, we know that the number of active cases of COVID-19 right now are twice that of the beginning of November. And what does that mean for people? It means that there are serious risks to vulnerable populations, seniors, those with immune compromised personal health will be at risk. So there are some serious concerns about the risk that people are facing. Given all of that, and the fact that this government seems to have not done the work necessary to have a clear plan in place for the vaccine, and the vaccine will be much further down the road, there are a number of things on our mind. First off, we know the economic update will talk about debt and deficit, and we are worried about that as well. But that worry about the debt and deficit cannot justify cutting the help that people need. And we know that liberals and conservatives are going to look at the debt and deficit and consider cutting the help that people need. But what they're not willing to do is asking the wealthiest to pay their fair share. And what we've been saying from the beginning is that people support this idea, and there is significant wealth. There are so many people that have done so well. The billionaires of Canada have increased their net wealth. Their wealthiest corporations have made massive profits. In fact, some have made record profits. So if we want to get through this difficult time, it should not be on the backs of people who have already sacrificed. We should ask those at the very top to pay their fair share. So we'll be looking for that in the economic update. That yes, the debt and deficit is concerning, but let's look at ways to pay for it, which asks the wealthiest to pay their fair share. We also know that because this pandemic is going to take a bit longer. We saw a light at the end of the tunnel with the vaccine, but in Canada, it looks like that light is still there, but it is further down the tunnel. And the tunnel is going to be longer and more worrisome than we thought before. So that means we need to have more help, and we need that help for longer. We're going to continue to push to see permanent changes to some of the supports that people need. We need to permanently fix long-term care. We need to make sure there's no profit in it. And it is inexcusable that the government could wait so long before actually doing something, before actually bringing dollars in real investments. And we know that long-term care centers, if they're for profit, if there is money delivered, we know that some of that money might end up in the pockets of shareholders instead of helping the seniors and the residents of these long-term care homes. So this is also a big concern. We want to make sure help gets to the residents, gets to our seniors. We don't want to see profit in our long-term care system. We want to see investments, but it's inexcusable that it's taken this long. We know that childcare is fundamental to the recovery. We need to make sure we invest massively in childcare. And we've called for, at a minimum, to see this commitment to childcare really be matched with the reality. $2 billion is just the starting point to keep the existing number of seats there, the existing number of spaces there. So we need to make sure we are investing in childcare in a real way. And then healthcare. We know that universal pharmacare and other health services need to be included in our healthcare system, particularly in a pandemic. And then finally, any help that we see this government mention, any help that goes to sectors that are hard hit, I think about the aerospace and air travel, all the folks that work in that sector that are hard hit, the tourism sectors, all the sectors that are hard hit. If we have any, we want to see support, sector-specific support, but that support has to be tied to work. It has to be tied to jobs. It has to be tied directly with strings attached to keeping people hired or rehiring people. It cannot be the case that a sector gets public money and then uses it to enrich the shareholders or for CEO bonuses or executive pay bonuses. There has to be strict limitations on that. So we want to know who's going to pay for the pandemic. We want the wealthiest. We want to make sure that there's more help to more people because the light at the end of the tunnel is further away. And we want to make sure there's strings attached to any help that's provided. Donc, on sait que c'est un temps tellement difficile. Les nombres de cas de la COVID-19 sont doublés depuis le début de novembre. Et ça veut dire qu'il y a une plus grande menace que nos proches, les populations vulnérables, peuvent tomber malades. Donc, on a peur et la situation est difficile. Donc, ce qu'on veut voir dans la mise en jour économique, c'est le fait qu'on doit parler de qui va payer le prix pour la relance. La facture pour la relance doit être payée par les plus riches, les ultra riches, pas par les gens qui ont déjà sacrifié beaucoup. Ça, c'est tellement important. Et on s'inquiète de la dette et déficit, mais ce n'est pas une excuse pour réduire l'aide aux gens. En fait, ce qu'il faut faire, c'est d'augmenter l'aide aux gens et ça doit être l'aide à long terme. Ça, c'est essentiel. Ça veut dire investissement pour aider nos aînés dans les soins de longue durée, dans les centres des soins de longue durée. Ça veut dire qu'il faut aider les provinces pour livrer les services de garde et pour les soins de santé, il faut donner plus d'aide et à long terme. Et finalement, on doit aider les secteurs qui étaient frappés par la COVID-19, les secteurs aériens, aérospatial, touristiques. Il y a plusieurs secteurs qui étaient tellement frappés. Il faut les aider avec les investissements, mais ces investissements doivent être liés avec les emplois. Ce n'est pas acceptable, c'est inacceptable en fait, si l'aide publique va enrichir les actionnaires ou les PDG d'un secteur. Ça, c'est inacceptable. Donc, ce sont les choses qu'on veut voir. On veut voir l'aide aux gens, l'aide à long terme, et il faut que les plus riches payent le juste part. Et c'est tellement important que l'aide est liée avec les emplois. Donc, je suis prêt pour vos questions. I'm ready for any questions you might have now.
Nous allons maintenant passer aux questions. Commençons par les questions au téléphone. Comme toujours, une question suivie par journaliste. We'll now take question, starting with questions on the phone as usual. One question, one follow-up per reporter. Operator, do we have a first question? Operator, do we have a first question?
We do not have any questions on the phone. Nous n'avons pas de questions sur le téléphone.
Thank you. We'll take questions from the room. Laurence?
Oui, bonjour, M. Singh.
Oui, bonjour.
Le directeur parlementaire du budget disait hier en entrevue à Radio-Canada que c'est important aujourd'hui qu'on ait des cibles claires, des cibles financières claires à un peu plus long terme, pas seulement pour l'année en cours, pour que les Canadiens sachent combien les programmes vont leur coûter. Et il disait, bien, un exemple, ça pourrait être par exemple de réduire là, le ratio dette-PIB dans les années à venir. Est-ce que vous êtes d'accord avec ça?
En fait, je pense qu'il faut s'occuper de la dette et déficit. C'est important. Je sais que ça va avoir un impact sur notre pays. Donc, oui, c'est quelque chose qui m'inquiète. Et je veux voir qu'on fait des mesures, on prend des mesures pour avoir une bonne situation. Mais ce que je veux clarifier, on a un choix entre réduire l'aide aux gens ou de parler de comment on peut augmenter notre revenu. Et les libéraux, les conservateurs et en fait les blocs ne sont pas prêts à parler de comment on peut augmenter notre revenu. Et ce qu'on a proposé à plusieurs reprises, c'est quelques façons, quelques manières où on peut augmenter le revenu en mettre en œuvre une taxe sur les fortunes des plus riches, ceux qui ont des fortunes de plus de 20 millions de dollars, de parler de les profits extrêmes, les profits excessifs et comment on peut taxer ça. Donc, on veut parler de revenus et revenus permanents à long terme et augmenter ça pour payer le prix pour pas seulement la pandémie, mais aussi pour la relance. Sure. Repeat that in English. So I'm definitely concerned, without a doubt, about the debt and deficit. But I don't want that to be an excuse to cut the help to people. We are the only party, the Liberals, the Conservatives, and the Bloc, frankly, are not prepared to say this, but we need to increase revenue. And we need to increase the revenue by looking at those who have done very well. The ultra-wealthy have increased their wealth. So we're looking at a wealth tax on those who've got fortunes of over 20 million, on a pandemic profiteering tax, those companies, large corporations that have made massive profits during the pandemic off of people's backs, they should be the ones that are paying. we're the only ones talking about increasing revenue. And during this difficult time, we need to make sure we're managing our resources well. And that means looking at revenue from those who have done really well and those who aren't paying their taxes here. So that's really important to us.
Donc, vous voulez augmenter les revenus, mais est-ce que vous voulez qu'on continue avec le train de dépenses actuel? Parce que là, on parle quand même d'un déficit historique. Là. On va voir comment il est, ce que les libéraux annoncent aujourd'hui. Mais est-ce que vous voulez qu'on continue avec le niveau de dépenses actuel ou qu'on réduise là, dans les prochains mois les dépenses gouvernementales?
Ce que je pense que non, ce n'est pas du tout acceptable de réduire l'aide aux gens. Et en fait, il faut s'assurer que l'aide aux gens est à long terme parce que la pandémie et l'impact de la pandémie va être à long terme. Et ce qu'on a vu avec la relance ou si on parlait d'une relance, la situation est maintenant pour monsieur, madame, tout le monde, pour les petites entreprises, leur situation s'empire jour après jour. Mais pour les plus riches, leur situation est de plus en plus positive. Donc, il y a une relance qui est tellement différente. Si vous êtes les ultra riches, ça va bien. Mais si vous êtes monsieur, madame, tout le monde, si vous êtes une petite entreprise, un resto dans la communauté, une petite entreprise dans la communauté, votre situation s'empire. Donc, si on n'aide pas les gens, ça va être la réalité. On va avoir des gens qui réussissent et ça va tellement bien. Les autres gens qui font face de plus en plus d'une situation qui s'empire. Et ça, c'est quelque chose que je veux éviter. Et si on n'agit pas, ça va être la réalité. Et je veux éviter ça.
Next question, David.
Hi, Mrs. Singh, David Thurton, CBC News. You spoke about the need to see investments in childcare and also national universal single-payer pharmacare. Can you put a number to that? What does a meaningful investment look like? Because we're like, you know, we probably will hear about something like that in the fiscal update from what we're hearing from, you know, our sources. Mm-hmm. But what are you going to be looking for? What's the number that you're going to be looking for that says like this is going to the Liberals are serious about addressing these issues?
Sure. So for childcare, we put forward a motion that was passed in Parliament that said to keep childcare at the level that it is right now, just to maintain current levels of childcare. And that's not saying that that's not getting us to the universal childcare we need, but just to maintain the level of childcare we have right now, given the fact that we need more childcare providers, more early childhood educators to provide the care so that there's safe conditions, less children in one space. We need at least $2 billion. That's from the experts that have talked about childcare. So we need at least $2 billion. That was our motion, which passed unanimously. So that's one figure we're going to look for. If the immediate injection of $2 billion is there, then we know that there is at least a step forward that's going to keep the existing number of childcare spaces. Then what we need over a period of time is for national, truly universal childcare for all. The figure is going to be closer to $10 billion. If that's a real commitment to putting in place childcare, we need to see the real dollars that will match up for a national universal childcare system. And we know that we need this. It's an essential part of the recovery. Without it, especially with people working at home, we need to make sure that women can get back to work. And without this investment, it's not going to happen. So that's just one example. For national pharmacare, similarly, we need to see a real commitment to a national, universal, publicly delivered program. We haven't seen that commitment yet from this government. They haven't committed to a truly national, universal program. So these are some things we want to see.
Totally different question.
Yes.
We haven't seen a budget. This is not a budget. It's a statement, and we saw a snapshot in the summer. How concerned about is that? How much of a concern is that for you? That, you know, we've gone through more than a year without a budget, or are you totally cool with what the Liberals are saying? You know, it's just we're in a time of uncertainty. It would be crazy to present a budget because the numbers are changing, you know, by the hour.
Well, we definitely need to see this update today. I think that's going to be really important. And based on this update, we can then look at what we need in the future. But a couple of things that are really clear. We know that the pandemic has cost us a lot. There's no question about it. And that's why, for me, more than anything, we want to see a real plan that actually asks the wealthiest to pay their fair share without a talk of revenue, without looking at revenue. At the end of the day, whether we're talking about a budget or an economic update, if the government's not willing to ask the wealthiest to pay their fair share, then what's going to happen is people are going to suffer. People are going to be asked to sacrifice more, and they've already paid too much. And so it's got to be in this economic update or in future economic updates or a budget, if it happens. The most important thing is we have to look at revenue. We have to ask those who have the ability to do so to contribute more. And we have to keep on investing. Otherwise, what's going to happen is the wealthiest are going to continue to see massive profits, some of them record profits, and everyone else, small businesses, everyday folks, are going to see their situation get worse and worse. And there's going to be this K-shaped recovery, and that is something I want to avoid.
Lee?
Yes, sir. Lee Berthiaume, Canadian Press. Good
Hey
to
there.
see you again.
Good to see you again, right?
Yeah, that's right. Wanted to ask, you've expressed concern about the deficit and uncontrolled spending a bit. I'm wondering, though, and the government has indicated that the fiscal update's not going to include any fiscal anchors. And I'm wondering if you feel that fiscal anchors are important. Is it time for the government to start looking at some fiscal anchors, or is now not the time?
Well, I'm really clear on what I want to see. I am concerned about the spending. I am concerned about debt and deficit, but I don't want that to be an excuse to cut the help to people. My concern is that it gets cut, and the only way it doesn't get cut is if we look at revenue. And that's why I'm saying very clearly, this government has to get serious about asking the wealthiest to pay their fair share. There's been record profits, massive amounts of wealth increase on the part of the wealthiest in Canada. And many of the wealthiest corporations that are doing really well don't pay any taxes in Canada. So we're losing out on the revenue of some of the most profitable companies that make money off the backs of people and have made money off the backs of people in this pandemic. They're the ones that should be paying for the recovery. And what I'm deeply concerned about is not just the debt and deficit, but because of it, the Liberals and Conservatives are going to push to cut help to people. And that would be the wrong thing to do right now. We need to keep that help in place and, in fact, make it easier to get in the second wave when people are really worried. We need to make sure there's more investments in people, and we ask the wealthiest to pay their fair share.
The NDP over the last year or so has repeatedly supported the Liberal government, the minority Liberal government, in a number of measures. You've laid out a number of expectations today. Where is your red line? At what point, if you don't see something today, what would that be? Where will the NDP stop supporting the Liberals?
Well, throughout this pandemic, what we've done is we've used the position we have to fight for people. And so we've negotiated and we have fought hard. And as those negotiations happen, I've let you know as a negotiation happens where we're at and what we're fighting for. So right now we're laying out our markers. We're laying out what we want to see. And when it comes down to negotiations, we'll keep you updated. But right now we're putting forward what we want to see in an economic update, what we want to see this government invest in. We want to make sure that they're making the wealthiest pay their fair share, that there's strings attached to help when it goes to different sectors that need help. And we need to make sure there's more help in place for people for longer, given the timeline of this pandemic. Those are the things we want to see. And then we'll let you know about updates when we sit down with negotiating. Oui. Donc, pour résumer, les trois choses, effectivement, un, c'est le fait qu'on doit s'assurer que le plus riche paie le juste part. Deuxièmement, on a besoin de voir plus d'aide et à long terme. Et finalement, on doit voir des liens avec les financements pour les secteurs qui en ont besoin et les emplois. Ça doit être lié. En anglais, on dit strings attached, donc ça doit être lié le financement avec les emplois.
And I'll check once again if we have a question on the phone. Nous allons vérifier si nous avons des questions au téléphone. Opérateur, avons-nous des questions?
S'il vous plaît, appuyez sur étoile 1 pour toute question. Please press star 1 for any questions. We do not have any questions on the phone. Nous n'avons pas de questions sur le téléphone.
All right. No more questions in the room? No? Okay. This concludes the press conference. Thank you.
Merci. Thank you very much.